Hello and welcome to episode 126 of the Filmumentaries podcast. I'm Jamie Benning, your host. Now, you may have noticed that this episode is out a little early. Well, there's a good reason for that. I'm taking you inside the BFI National Archive in Berkhamsted, a place where film history is not only preserved, but actively projected and printed and, of course, celebrated. And furthermore, it relates directly to the BFI Film on Film Festival, and the tickets for that are available to the public as from tomorrow, the 9th of May 2025. So that's why this episode is out early. The brilliant Film on Film Festival runs from the 12th to the 15th of June. It's a rare event that champions the unique experience of watching films on physical film. That could be nitrate, 35mm, 16mm, and just about everything else in between, rather than the digital convenience we're so used to. So during my time at the archive, I spoke to several of the experts who make the festival and the preservation of the materials that are at the festival possible. So I sat down with James Bell, the Senior Curator of Fiction at BFI National Archive and Programme Director of the Film on Film Festival, the archive's Chris Stenner, Film Laboratory Lead, Sonia Genete, Curatorial Archivist, Martin Cofill, Projectionist and QC, and David Jones, the Film Scanning Lead, who ensures that these rare titles are digitally preserved before they disappear altogether. I want to say a huge thanks to Kieran Webb and to Sarah Bemmond for organising this fantastic day. It was a genuine privilege, it really was, to get behind the scenes with the people who quite literally keep film history running through the projectors. And yeah, I had a wonderful day and just so grateful for this experience. You know, this podcast has given me some real pinch me moments, visiting Skywalker Ranch and Lucasfilm last year, interviewing heroes of mine like Walter Murch and Lorne Peterson, Ken Ralston. And this was another one of those moments, another pinch me moment, standing there in the archives, kind of taking it all in, surrounded by all of this passion for film and with all of this equipment and all of this history. So here's the several conversations I had at the BFI National Archives, and I'll be back at the end for a bit more jabbering on.
Hi, I'm James Bell. I'm Curator of Fiction in the BFI National Archive and also Programme Director of the Film on Film Festival.
So, talking about the festival specifically, the Film on Film Festival, what is it that attracts people to this festival, do you think, in this age where we've got films available to us at the touch of a button? Why are people coming to the theatre specifically to see films on celluloid?
It's the real distinctive aspect of coming to... Well, there are so many reasons, but it's that when you come to see a film print, it's like a live performance in a way. Every screening of a film print is a unique moment. And I think people respond to that now, almost because of the ubiquity and the way that we can access things so easily. The specialness, the uniqueness of that experience isn't there in that way. But when you come to see a film print, you know that there's something happening live in front of you. When we talk about the festival, I've often talked about the kind of human chain that's involved in putting on this festival, but putting on any film print. There's the archivists who've preserved the film initially at the archive, the curators who've selected them, the drivers who've driven them down, then the projectionists who screen them. And I think when you go and see the screening of a print and in this festival, you're kind of aware of that aspect. There's so much more to it than pressing a button and starting the DCP up, etc. You know. And then every time you watch a film print, there's a subtle change. There's the sense of the flicker that's happening in front of your eyes, the movement, the sense of that. But also there'll be small, maybe imperceptible, hopefully no big tears or anything. There'll be something happening to that print in that moment. So I think people are responding to that and wanting something unique and in a particular place, happening here and there, only happening in front of you in that kind of live way. So I think the festival's tapped into that. I don't know if it's a post-pandemic thing in particular. Maybe it's that's part of it, but it's also just in this age of ubiquity and superabundance of digital, as you say, you can access you can't access all of the films in the festival.
No.
And that's probably something we can say. So it's two things. I think there's that. There's also that many of the films in the program are familiar. You know, we're opening it with perhaps the most kind of emblematically blockbuster, culture-changing film with Star Wars, but that's only been viewable for years in the special edition versions. Okay, even if you had a VHS of it, you can see a version of it, of the original 1977 cut or the post-Empire Strikes Back version, but you're still not seeing that version. You're still not seeing what was there and in the quality that you get from an original print. So there's seeing films you're familiar with, but with the differing experience, a different kind of aesthetic experience that there is from watching a print. And that's true. So, you know, we've got 2001 on an IMAX 70mm print. That's a film that people will be familiar with, but we've never screened that particular print, a new print that Christopher Nolan oversaw at the BFI IMAX. Twin Peaks again, you know. So there are all these titles that people will be familiar with, but there's a different experience of watching it on a print. And then there are those films that just aren't available in other contexts. So it's something we talked about in the last festival. It's the same with this one too. There's this assumption now that, you know, so much is available online through legal or otherwise means, but not everything. We know there are things in the archive that aren't online, that haven't been scanned and made available. So there are some things that only can be seen on prints and archival prints. There are examples of that through the festival. Then there are things like, and we've got I Shot Andy Warhol in the program, Mary Harron's film. It's not that the materials are scarce in the way that they are with, you know, a very rare print that we hold. We hold few of, but the film there have been rights issues that have kept it from any home video for years and years. It's not on any streaming platform, so it's unavailable in other forms as well, and it has to be seen on this print here. So I think there are lots of reasons that attract people to it.
And I think there's that communal aspect as well, isn't there? Just there's nothing quite like watching a film. I mean, when I saw Jaws, the print that you have here from Film on Film in 2023, I've seen that film probably hundreds of times. I made a feature-length documentary about it, so I've seen it many, many times over and over again. I've seen it with audiences. I've seen it at the IMAX, but I'd never seen it on film before. And seeing it on film with an audience, and in some cases, people that had never seen the film before at all, just that communal aspect, sort of bouncing off each other's emotions. There's this kind of energy in the room you just don't get, I don't think, by watching something at home, even if you're with your friends. I mean, I've seen comedies at home that I've not found particularly funny, but then I'm with an audience and I'm kind of laughing at the people laughing at it. And then that bounces back to you and you get this kind of reflective thing between people as well. And I think that's what the festival does great, is it just gathers enthusiasts together in a place, but also giving people the first chance to see a film that they know, but on the big screen for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. I think going back to that thing I was saying about it being a live event, there's a kind of focusing of attention on the moment in watching that, knowing you're watching the print. You know that the print is going through the projector at that moment. You're watching it live. Everybody's doing that. That adds to the kind of intensity of focus in that communal moment. I was talking about the human chain that's involved in putting on film prints. I think, you know, this festival, there's that sense of community of shared enthusiasts around seeing film on film, but we're building on the work that's been done by lots of other smaller collectives, programming groups. We're working in this festival with Lost Reels, who it's like Jeff Badger, who runs that, has put on a number of events where he selects archival titles that are rarely seen. So we kind of want to acknowledge that there's that sense of, around the exhibiting and putting on of film prints, there's a sense of community that exists there, the cinema as community and the groups that are involved in that, in a way that maybe you don't get with quite in the same way with, say, digital projections. There's something extra that brings people together. So there's that communal moment when you're in the cinema itself, and as you say, you're all watching something, and there's the sense of the live thing. But more broadly, a kind of revival and interest in seeing films on films, the networks that have grown up over the last few years to really sustain that. There's a real sense of community around that that's been really great, I think, and leads to, you know, made lots of friends through that, and then it comes, you meet people with shared interests and shared enthusiasms and a shared desire to see this grow and thrive.
Just in terms of the selection of the films, I mean, how do you go through that process of deciding what's going to be on the program? I mean, it's a real eclectic mix of films, and some are prints that have just been recently struck again. There are archival prints, as you said. There's 70mm prints as well. What is the starting point for something like Film on Film?
The starting point is it's led by curators of the BFI National Archive, so. I think that's what is quite distinctive about the programming of the festival. It's led by people who've got real expertise and knowledge of the collections of the BFI National Archive, So it starts from them and the various curators across the team making suggestions of things they think are of interest. Sometimes they're like particular personal passions of theirs. But then behind that, there's what's interesting about this festival is we want to show interesting films, but then there's the particular materials, the particular formats, the particular prints that are involved in that, and the interest that kind of, as well, above and beyond the film itself, there's the interest in what stock it's on, what format it is. So, there's a title in here. We've got Slightly Scarlet, Alan Dwan's. It's a fascinating film in so many ways. It's a kind of mid-50s Technicolor film noir, shot by John Alton, the great noir cinematographer, written by a writer who wrote a number of Douglas Sirk films, so it's got that melodrama aspect. So it's fascinating all those levels as well. It's also shot on Superscope, which was a rare, kind of rarely screened today, a competitor that sprang up in the wake of CinemaScope. But so the chance to see an original Superscope print projected is of interest in itself, above and beyond the film. So there are those aspects too. We've got a program of Jan Svankmajer shorts here, and Jez Stewart, the curator, the animation curator in the archive. Part of the interest in selecting those was that they're on a particular film stock that was common in Eastern Europe at the time, that has a particular color palette and effect when you see it. So there are those extra aspects to it that, above and beyond the films themselves and the wanting to bring those to audiences. There's all the kind of unique, and each of these screenings has different aspects like that, I suppose. And I quite want to foreground those aspects too. I mean, Star Wars is the ultimate one in this way too. There's the film, but then there's also, we can show it on an original release IB Technicolor print, which was uniquely made for the British release. So the Technicolor labs at the time in Rome and in LA had closed. But in London, the Technicolor lab was still open. And so the release prints of Star Wars in 1977 were, in Britain, uniquely produced on these Technicolor prints that have meant over time they haven't faded, unlike the Eastman Color and other prints that were released internationally. So kind of focusing the attention on those particular archive stories and the kind of the life story of some of these prints as well.
Yeah.
I think those were the stories we looked for. So let's find the interesting films, but let's also find the things about how we can spotlight different formats or, different film stocks, or even films where we know they've had a particular life story to them.
You've got a couple of Kubrick movies. Is that about always sort of maintaining these relationships with personal archives as well? Is because I know Jan Harlan, very close to Stanley, obviously, his brother-in-law, deals with a lot of that stuff. Is that an important thing to you, to always kind of foster these relationships with those private collections as well?
This was a discussion that we had. The Kubrick estate came to us to say that in the house just outside St Albans, where the family still live, there were a number of prints that were kept on the site, and the two we're screening are, I think they're kind of complementary titles, two early things. We've got his very first short film, Day of the Fight. So this is on 35mm, shot in the early 50s, and it's the story of boxers getting ready for a fight, and but it's told with this kind of noirish voiceover. And then we've also got The Killing, which is his third feature, I suppose. He first one he disavowed, didn't he?
Yeah.
Fear and Desire. But this was, again, it's got this noir voiceover. So the two actually work quite well together. And their prints, they're quite unique, obviously coming from Kubrick's own personal collection. The Killing is this quite high contrast print. It's interesting to understand, like, what was it produced for, but Kubrick kept it on site. Jan Harlem, I hope, will come and introduce them both, and we'll talk a bit more about how Kubrick watched films at home, what the process was. But he absolutely kept things for various different reasons. But he would keep things. He would have got these prints for different reasons, in that meticulously controlled way, I suppose, that he oversaw all of his releases. But that's the story. The films are the films, but these are unique objects in that we know Kubrick watched them, and there's kind of a thrill in watching these things and knowing he once looked upon these. What was his response to the grading of this film, or when was Day of the Fight? When did he watch this? Did he keep this as a kind of particular cherished memento because this was his first film, and all of those things? As you're watching it, as well as being drawn into the film itself, you're kind of drawn into that story. You're reminded of those things at different points, and if there's a scratch, how did that happen?
Yeah.
When in the intervening decades did that happen? There's those kind of aspects to it too.
Yeah, I also think there's obviously the story behind these prints, and there's the want and the need for you to screen them, but there's also on the flip side of that coin is the need to make sure they're preserved and they're looked after. How do you strike that balance between making sure it's preserved and kept forever, but also being able to screen it at the same time? What are some of the challenges you face in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, we are strict on that, and there are certain titles that we wouldn't screen if they're. I mean, to take for example, in the last festival, we screened The Swimmer by the Perrys, Frank and Eleanor Perry, and we took the decision that there were shrinkage issues with the print. We could screen it one more time. We wouldn't screen that again; it would be too damaging to the print. We'll keep it for preservation purposes. We had a similar issue this time. Again with the Frank and Eleanor Perry title, actually, there's a film called Last Summer, which is one of those missing, really kind of great but completely missing films of the new Hollywood era. And it's 1969, but it's not available in any home video format. It's been very rare until now. The only public screenings of it have been from a 16mm print. For years, have been a 16mm print kept in Melbourne by a collector, I believe. But that presented an issue. Were we being reckless in screening one of the prints we had? So we did some research and understood that there are other prints in preservation. And before going ahead with this screening, which we're presenting with Lost Reels, actually, made sure we made a preservation scan. So we've got that there to preserve it. So there are those kind of decisions are always there, and assessing whether it's the right thing to do to present something, to project something. Does it present potentially a risk to the material? Is that risk something? Is it material that's held elsewhere? Are we, we'd always check that. The biggest thing, I suppose, in that regard is the nitrate titles. Yeah. So, nitrate presents particular challenges. The BFI South Bank NFT1 cinema in particular is the only place in Britain that can screen nitrate publicly. Really the only place in Europe. I think there's one other place, a festival in Serbia that projects nitrate too, but infrequently. So it's because there are real challenges to do so. There are obviously, there's all the equipment at the South Bank to protect people in the event of fire, but the prints themselves are fragile. These are all prints from pre-1951 when nitrate was phased out. And it's not just a case of us, the others, looking through the collection and saying, oh, we have a nitrate print of that, let's do that. There are all sorts of particular issues because of the age of the print, because of the fragility of the material itself, and because of the risks of running prints that have too much shrinkage rather through the projectors. That mean once that initial selection is made, there are all sorts of quality checks and material checks that have to be done before we can understand if it is actually projectable. And we wouldn't obviously put material at risk that we felt wasn't, for the reasons of the risk to material, but also the actual risks of projecting it. So the hit rate is quite low. So to actually find a projectable nitrate print in the collection is exciting. And we've got a good selection this time, I think, including what we believe is the oldest film print ever projected to British audiences in a Chaland de Lou from 1929, original release print from 29. So yeah, that's exciting.
Well, it's the full range, isn't it? I mean, that's the great thing about this festival is it caters to so many different tastes. From, like you said, the blockbuster in Star Wars and all the way to a film from 1929. It must be fascinating to be curating this collection of films and having the chance to sort of preview them all. Is there one that's particularly stands out to you that you want to see with an audience?
I really want to see. I'm excited to see. We're screening is one of the special presentations on the Friday night is Ernst Lubitsch's The Student Prince in Old Heidelberg, which it's one of the great silent films. I think really in that Lubitsch, it's got the Lubitsch touch all over it. It's witty and lively and funny. We're presenting it with a live synced score. So Carl Davis, the great composer, did made a score for it, an orchestral score, which was recorded, and it was last performed with orchestra and to the film in Britain in the late 90s. Hasn't been screened since. But we're showing it from a print which we're taking from the photoplay collection, actually, that worked with the BFI. That's Kevin Brownlow and Patrick Stanbury's company. But we're presenting it with a live synced score. So this is the recorded score synced to the print, which has its own challenges. But it's just, I think that's going to be wonderful. So we're doing it as a tribute to Carl Davis, and so I'm really excited for that, to see how we surmount those technical challenges, which we will, but also to see that film with an audience, because it's bizarrely one of the great silent films, but again, isn't on Blu-ray, isn't available for whatever reason, and one I know will be exciting to see with an audience. So there's that. Last summer as well, I'm really excited to screen, because it's such a rarity. And, you'd think it's from 1969. It's a Hollywood studio production. How has it gone quite so missing in those years? We might understand if there's an older film from the silent era in particular, where there are, scarce materials issues. To think of something from the late 60s that's gone missing, and so to present that back as well, I think will be really exciting.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique festival, because in a world where we're used to streamers and different platforms, I think there was a belief that you'll always be able to find that movie that you want on one of those platforms. And as we know, there are films that just aren't on there. I remember talking to Doug Weir about when Get Carter came out, and he said it could well be the last physical release of that film. So I think there are more and more people kind of curating their collections now. Do you think that the festival and the interest in certain films in that festival might drive a preservation of a film for a future release by the BFI?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, there's always, I'm trying to think of examples in the program, but yeah, potentially. I mean, the hope is you present something that, I'm not saying that we then want to do preservation work on it, but there are titles, British titles in the program that have perhaps not had the audience that they really could have. There's a film, actually, just thinking of one. There's Clive Brooks' On Approval, which is the only film that he directed based on a play. That is, Lindsay Anderson called it the funniest British film ever made, and it's brilliant. It's kind of Oscar Wilde meets Lubitsch comedy of marriage and with all of that wit to it. It's as wouldn't disagree with Lindsay Anderson. It's one of the great British comedies, and I think it's celebrated among some, but it's not quite got the reputation it could have. Whether it leads to further BFI work, time will tell. But even if it just brings it back to audiences and gets it positioned in a different way, and kind of seen as more than a curio, then yeah, absolutely, the festival can do that, and I hope it does.
Yeah, I noticed as well, I think I mentioned at the top, that there's a couple of 35mm prints that are newly struck prints. There's, I think, Local Hero is one of those. What is the sort of reasoning behind having a new print as opposed to having an archival print of a movie?
Well, there are a number of new prints in the festival, and I think it's important to say that the BFI's commitment to film on film is both exhibiting it, screening archival prints. It's also about producing new prints as well. So Local Hero is one of them. We've also got the Roundup, Nicholas Yank Show film, Strong Room, a a film by Vernon Seale, British B movie from the early 60s that Tarantino, Edgar Wright, Scorsese have been championing recently. So we made a new print of that. I Walk with a Zombie. There's new film prints of some films by the Grierson sisters, 30s documentary films, British documentary films. So there's that ongoing commitment from the BFI to actually making new materials, making new print materials, and that continues. That's existed for some time. Some of these prints were part of a big lottery-funded project to create 100 new film prints. So I Walk with a Zombie, The Roundup, and Voyage to Italy, one's produced for that reason, and Local Heroes come subsequently. But it's an ongoing commitment that we've got to doing that.
Beyond the screenings, the festival also has talks and workshops. There are these kind of educational components to the festival as well. Can you talk about some of those things that people are going to be able to see?
Yeah. So, there, as you say, there are a number of workshops and talks around the program as well. Part of that, so we wanted to bring the kind of hidden wiring of the Conservation Centre in the BFI National Archive down to the BFI South Bank so people can see the work and the people who do that work. Talking about the human chain of putting on this festival, it's the curators and it's the projectionists and the South Bank team, but it's also all of the archive staff as well, and their work. And I think what we wanted to do was, so we're taking over the atrium space in front of NFT2, and we'll have winding benches. And we did this in the last festival too, but we're going to do it again. Just a chance for people to meet the conservation specialists, other people who work here at the archive, ask them questions, maybe even see a career that they might want to have themselves, actually, understanding what the different roles are, what the different responsibilities and people who go into archiving film, preserving it, and then putting on a festival like this. So we've got a number of those things. We've got other events around particular aspects of exhibiting film. So we've got a talk from projectionists. What are the challenges in working projection? How do you sustain the skills and the enthusiasm for projecting film in this age? Because it's highly specialized technical skill, and the knowledge needs to be passed on. So we've got a panel talking about that. The majority of film projection at the moment, of course, is digital, the overwhelming majority. How do we ensure that those skills survive? Because it's all very well us saying, we've got these film prints, there's an audience appetite for it. We need to ensure that there's the infrastructure, and that's the skilled personnel who can actually project it. Also the equipment that, these projectors need maintenance, the parts need to be produced. What are the challenges in doing that? How do we sustain this whole ecosystem of showing film on film? So the festival, some of the talks and workshops are going to look into those aspects as well. How do we ensure that we make these screenings as accessible for all as we can? There are particular challenges in offering options for audiences with accessibility needs when it comes to showing film on film, and we're looking into different ways of how to address that, how to ensure that we can offer that to audience. So there's a panel talk, that are going to look into that different, and we'll learn from the experience of putting on this festival as well and do that. So I think those workshops are part of it, a whole part of the process. There's another panel where myself and colleagues will be talking about this process of creating new prints. What went into that? What were the decisions that were taken on which prints to move forward to? What were the pragmatic, practical hurdles involved in doing that? So that should be exciting too. So last summer, it's so difficult to see, and I was excited when I discovered we had 2 prints in the archive. And then you had the initial assessments done. The report came back from the conservation specialists that both had issues, color fading, other issues. It was interesting. Each of the prints were on different film stocks, and the one we've gone with is on AGFA stock. So the fading, I mean, ordinarily when, as you know, over time, as a film fades, it tends to fade with that kind of magenta bias. So it gets that pinkish hue across it. But in this case, AGFA stock fades with a blue cast. So this in itself was interesting as well. The film is really difficult to see. So, but also to see the particular effects on a particular film stock and view it, again, it's unique. We're seeing this print. Yes, it's faded. I mean, we don't hide from that fact in the booklet. We don't hide from that fact in presenting it. Yes, it has scratches. It shows its life, and it shows all that wear. But audiences will see that, and I think there's kind of an extra excitement almost in seeing it in that state. You know that it's a very rare object, and this is the opportunity to see it. But also, you're seeing it with this very particular kind of fading. There is still color there. It's still definitely worth seeing in that way. And I think it was kind of pointing that fact as well. Yes, we've got pristine new prints in this program. There are the brand new prints of Voyage to Italy, which we've made, which is from a contact print from the original negative, which looks stunning. But then there are those cases where, like last summer, where it's almost impossible to see otherwise. So to do so, if you have to see that on a print that has fading or has the scars of its life, then so be it. That in itself tells a story, and that's interesting, and that adds to that kind of live, unique aspect of that screening. So we didn't try and hide from that. And there are other prints where, we say they wear their scars of their life with pride. And you find yourself wondering, well, when did that scratch happen? What was the story of that? And I think audiences understand that. As long as you're upfront and say there are these issues with this print in that sense, you know what you're getting. It doesn't necessarily detract. In fact, it can actually add levels of interest. Of course, it's great to see something on a pristine print. It's great to see something in that way, but it's not the only way to experience something.
Yeah. I think if you think of it in terms of a classic car where, what isn't restored to its former glory, the glory is in the patina of the paintwork, and the narrative is told through those means, isn't it? You can put your hands on it and feel it, and
it puts you in touch. It puts you in touch, like a touching distance to the moment of its creation, but also the whole life story of that print itself, and reminds you of the fact that there have been these intervening decades. There have been these. It has had a life. It has had a story over those years. I think when we're watching a nitrate print in particular, it can sometimes be incredibly exciting. When I say we're screening the oldest film print ever projected in Britain with Chien Andalou, to think this is the very same print that audiences in 1929 saw it when it was this extremely transgressive, shocking object. Over time it's become, I think it probably still retains that power to suggest. In fact, we're actually programming it twice in the festival. We have the nitrate print screening. There's also an 8mm print showing in the Experimenter program as part of a program called The Ghosts of Transgression, which looks at transgressive films that are really shocking in their moment, and asks the question, what happens to films which had that impact in their time over time? Do they retain their power to shock, etc.? But in the case of Chien Andalou, to put you back in touch of that and be reminded of that fact when you're watching it, I find really exciting. We've got, say, an original release Hitchcock film with The Man Who Knew Too Much from the 30s. There's something about when you see a restoration of some of these films, that by the time it was restored, its reputation was assured. That was hence why it was restored, I suppose. It's kind of got that cultural cachet by that point. But when you're seeing an original object, it's very contemporary. You're almost seeing it. You can put yourself in mind in a different way to the audience of the time and see it afresh. The clothes, the fashions in the film, the kind of idiomatic phrases are all very contemporary to their moment. You could do that with watching a digital version. You could do that with watching a later restoration. But there's something about watching the original that forces you to consider that in a different way that I find really, transporting. I hope audiences do too.
We're just on the cusp of tickets being available for this festival for members and then the public on the 9th, I believe it is. Are you already thinking ahead to the next Film on Film festival?
I hope we do another. There is a growing a long list already. Yeah, because of course we do so much research for this, and there are titles that we The thing about doing the research is it throws up other things as well. It throws up things that you hadn't considered. It throws up formats, or just kind of avenues through the collection that maybe we hadn't considered before. So yeah, already thinking ahead and looking in that way. No, can't reveal anything here and now, but yeah, there is definitely that aspect, and things that we weren't able to do this time. Formats that we'd love to do that might have their own challenges to present back to audiences that haven't been done for a while. Maybe we can, surmount those by 2028, 2027, beg your pardon.
One of the other really interesting screenings that pops out to me is on the closing of the festival on the 15th, which is the 35mm print of the original US pilot episode of Twin Peaks. I think people often don't appreciate that that's how we got to see these things on TV. There was a 35mm print struck. It was telecined and put on a U-matic tape probably at that time and screened on the TV. Can you tell us about that particular print?
Yeah, I mean, exactly. The vast majority of the prints in the festival are, as was experienced by cinema audiences, original cinema audiences, if they're archival prints, original cinema audiences at the time. But Twin Peaks reminds us that the prints were used for different purposes too. So that is the very same original print that the BBC used, as you say, in telecine, for that original broadcast of the film of the pilot episode in October 1990. And it's the US pilot, I should say. It's not the European pilot, which had all the kind of wrapped it all up neatly at the end. And it's different. It has a different quality. I think sometimes we're used to seeing now increasingly. We watch films on TV. Hopefully we all turn off our motion smoothing and all the other vivid color popping things that we get. But we are used to seeing things with that on televisions and kind of digital projections, and the kind of balance and the stability in the color can often seem quite different. So watching Twin Peaks, it has the colors do look unique. They pop in a different way, and so it's a different experience. It's exciting knowing that you're watching that artifact with that story. This is the thing that started the phenomenon in Britain and the cult that is Twin Peaks. And there's that thrill, but it's also, you're seeing it differently than you do if you are watching that video recording of that original broadcast or the Blu-ray. Actually seeing it on a print has a different impact in itself. In terms of the color, one of the great things I think in the festival is seeing color on nitrate. So, we've got a number of black and white titles in the nitrate program. Black and white looks so wonderful on when seen on nitrate prints. The blacks are really inky, the whites are really shining, and there's that silvery quality to them. But when you see a Technicolor print, it's a totally unique kind of color palette. So we've got Blanche Fury, the British melodrama from the 40s with Valerie Hobson, Stuart Granger, and there are moments watching it where you see Valerie Hobson's yellow gloves or a big red shawl, where the color, it's not so much now that it kind of leaps out and glows and pops in the way that you might expect for kind of if from watching digitally or on TV. When you see Technicolor on nitrate, there's a different depth and quality that I think is completely unique to seeing it nitrate. There's a kind of velvetiness, is the way I've just been describing it, that you just don't get from seeing it in any other form. A safety print digitally, there's something completely unique to seeing that on a nitrate print, and has to be experienced, because there's no other way to get it. A still, or a photograph of the print won't quite do it justice. You have to see it in that moment, and that's another thing where you're seeing. You have to see this object. You have to see it there and then in the moment to have that effect and to experience that. So that's exciting.
Oh yeah, I'm Chris Stenner, and I'm the film laboratory lead here at the BFI National Archive in Berkhamsted. My role is predominantly just looking after the running of the photochemical film laboratory, making it sure it runs smoothly. It sort of entails all sorts of things from ultrasonic film cleaning through to printing, processing. So we can, we've got a fully functional lab here. We can produce almost, anything, just as long as it's black and white, really. I've been here 30 years now. The building's been here since, I think, mid-80s. The processing machines that went in when the building was being built have actually got a date of 1984 on them. So, yeah, they've been running a long time. We're a small team, so we've just got to keep everything running, really. I like to plan things ahead, but it never really turns out like, as I plan. But, just roll with the punches and see how things go. We've just finished a print of a small film called Early Experiments in Hand-Drawn Sound. It's about 200 feet long, and it's a sort of visual representation of hand-drawn sound. So instead of having a normal variable area soundtrack, the soundtrack's actually been drawn on by hand. So you've got little circles and triangles, and also it makes lots of pops and clicks and whirring sound. And then on the non-track side, you've then got a visual representation of the drawings. So so that came from a safety dupe negative. So we had to make a new print of that. So we went through sort of finding the best material for it. It would have been cleaned. We'd done a few tests on our printing machine to establish the right exposure, and also the fact that, because it's mainly a sound thing, we couldn't have any frame lines printed into it. Otherwise, that produces sort of odd sound effects, sort of known as motorboating. So it sounds, just like a motorboat going by. So we had to choose the right machine for that. So that would have been printed, and then a new print produced and processed in our lab. Right. I suppose when I first started here, there was some sort of trepidation, but after a while, you just treat it all with the respect it deserves. It's been around a long time. We would like to preserve it for that. Right, in this room we've got 3 ultrasonic film cleaners. So they run on a variation of perchloroethylene and a sort of HFE solvent, which is a new hydrocarbon-based solvent for cleaning most of the fingerprints, dirt, dust, grease, oil off, really. So that leaves a nice clean negative or print ready for us to continue with the next process.
What's the giant?
The giant thing over that's a Wetgate film printing machine made by Debris in France. Wetgates are rather useful in that we can fill a chamber up with perchloroethylene, which has the same refractive index as the film, so that any of the scratches in the base get filled in and leave the negative that you're making relatively scratch free. Yeah. Being an archive, everything we deal with is old by its nature, and that includes all the machinery we have here as well, apart from some of the 1 or 2 new pieces. But a lot of the equipment we have, certainly printing machines, are old, and they've been adapted to suit some fragile and shrunken film. So we got a very talented engineering department who can make parts for things. We've now got a 3D printer, so we can pretty much make almost anything. We're very lucky.
And behind us here, is this an optical printer?
It certainly is. It's a Nielsen optical printer, which would have been used back in the labs to produce everything from special effects, titles, subtitles, superimpose, shots. Mm-hmm. So that's the precursor to the your CGI stuff you see nowadays.
It's a bit of a dying art in many ways, isn't it? How do you go about making sure the next generation has this knowledge?
We're very fortunate in that we've just started a new traineeship scheme, and we've got a couple of people who've gone through that scheme. We've just started now, so it's very important. We're in ultimately we're an aging workforce, and a lot of people who have the skills and experience are coming to the end of their working life. So it's very important that we do bring the younger generation in, and we're very fortunate that the BFI has seen that this needs to be dealt with, and doing something about it. We're going down the corridor into our film processing lab. Just in here. And here we have two of my colleagues, Ian and Luke. As I was saying earlier, the two machines over there date back to the mid-'80s. And we've got a new machine here that's been in for about the last 2 years. So it's negative and positive compatible, so we can run the film through either a positive or a negative bath. So we're currently in the process of getting one of the other machines up and running now.
And what sort of length of time are we talking about to do this work on a film print of, say, a couple of hours?
It all depends on the amount of work involved, whether you're going from a positive or a negative. If you're going from a negative, you think it's quite straightforward to make another positive. But if you're going from a positive, then you need to make a deep negative. So it's just added work. But we're very fortunate here that we do have the time to be able to do these things and take our just make sure we come up with the best results possible.
Mm-hmm. It's got a very unique smell, I think.
A mix of fixer, developer, and WD-40 to keep it all running.
Nice, yeah. And what's in the room behind us here?
Here we got another Nielsen optical camera machine and a synchronizer. So this is the one that's we've been using recently. This was the machine that my predecessor used when he was working at Rank Film Laboratories many years ago. So yes.
Do you keep your eye on these things appearing in auctions? I noticed just the other day, actually, the Technicolor auction. There's a Moviola, and I think the reserve was only like £350. I did think about putting in a bid myself, but then I thought I don't think my wife would have gone for that. But yeah, do you keep an eye on?
Yes, we certainly do. I mean, unfortunately, many years ago, a lot of the film labs closed down, and we were the lucky beneficiaries of that. It's a horrible thing to say that we were the beneficiaries of somebody else closing down, but we were able to get a few pieces of equipment. But I don't hold the purse strings. I just say what I like and pass it in their direction.
There's something just so fascinating about seeing film cans because there's no cover art, and you kind of want to know what's inside. You kind of want to pick it up.
Yeah, I'm very much. I like the tangible, actually being able to pick up a can, and as opposed to sort of playing with digits. It's you can't pick up a digit.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. And this is an inspection bench of some sort, is it?
Synchronizer thing, so we can just make sure our prints are in sync and just make sure there's no material missing from the negatives and that sort of thing. So.
Are you a collector of Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays, or do you like to come along to the festivals like Film on Film to see your work with an audience?
I far rather go see it actually, in the cinema and the screen. It's I think one of my best memories of my work here was a restoration of Great White Silence, I think it was, and we were there at the gala screening at the South Bank, and my name came up on the credits at the end, and. That really,
nice.
That's what brought it home. So it was a nice way to finish everything.
I'm Kieran Webb. I'm head of conservation at BFI National Archive.
All right. So where are we now, Kieran?
We are now in Vault 1.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I say 1 because we've got 3 vaults of this size on this site. It's most of the film collection is stored at a different location. In Warwickshire. It's in. I don't know how this temperature feels to you, Jamie. Today it's probably feeling quite good in here.
It's nice.
It's about 12, 13 degrees and 35% relative humidity. So, that's quite dry, but not too dry. Film needs, not to be too damp, but not to dry out as well. And those are quite lenient conditions because this is full of prints that are ready to go, that are accessible anyway. They can be booked and go within a reasonable amount of time. Whereas the ones that are in the sort of preservation source material, they're in the -5 degrees Celsius and 35% RH, are much more stringent for the long term storage, and they need a couple of days to get up to temperature to avoid the risk of condensation.
So we're looking at floor to ceiling, multiple shelves all the way down this room.
Yes.
How high are we looking here? So like 30 feet or something?
I think that's a good estimate. 30 feet, and they go back. I mean, would you
wow,
care
yeah.
to?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of 40 metres or something.
Yeah, so if we go wall to wall, so we're in the middle aisle, and we've got, shelving left and right of us. I don't know how to measure it in football pitches, but we're talking
we
maybe
could certainly have
half,
a game in here.
And film cans come in different shapes and different sizes, not shapes so much. But you could say there's about 250,000 cans in here capacity, and as you can see, there's not much free space.
Yeah, it's pretty packed in.
Yeah. So these are, as I say, these are prints, 35mm, 16mm in them. I think probably all exclusively actually, because they're ready to go to cinemas, and internationally, still a lot of prints are booked from the BFI. I really am constantly amazed at how often we're sending, for example, American titles to the US to play.
Right.
So,
is that because preservation here is better in some way, or
I think
we were more lucky in some way?
I think what it indicates is certainly the excellence of the BFI's care for the collection, but in terms of prints that can go out, we seem to be a source of them, and we do. Within managing all the other activities that go on here across different collections, we do what we can to support theatrical screening, big screen presentation of prints.
It used to be the case as well, didn't it, that a film would be released in the US and then we would get it some months later. So I wonder if, in some ways, the end of a print's life was in the UK, like it was left here, or maybe, I don't know, maybe it was given back.
I think there was a period... we weren't last stop on the line, and I think in some ways the UK was a bit of a hub and had very large laboratories. You think of Denham, Rank Labs, Deluxe, later on Technicolor. Yeah. So I think quite a lot of duping, copying for wider release happened in the UK, certainly in the nitrate era, so into the early 50s, even mid 50s in terms of prints. So a lot of titles would come to us eventually that way. So that I think explains a large part of it. We have never had an acquisitions budget as such to buy copies. We depend on donations from distributors, production companies, filmmakers, etc.
Is there, beyond the film rules that we're seeing floor to ceiling, as I said, is there also the archive here of like objects, of the other things that have been donated, scripts, photographs? Is that housed here as well?
Yep, that's right. That's called special collections, non-moving image, but mixed media for sure. My colleagues there always remind me it's not just paper, but it is. Yes, it's the Anne Skinner's continuity script of Star Wars. Yeah.
And the Polaroids, all those early photos,
that will be part of the Film on Film Festival. Yeah. There's also Alexander McKendrick's shooting script for the Lady Killers and Carol Reed's shooting script for the Third Man, which doesn't include the cuckoo clock speech, so we can seems we can say it was worked up on set. There's various things in there. A lot of posters and lots of production designs. Costume designs. For example, from Julie Harris, a very renowned British costume designer, and they're fascinating because it will be their sketches, their coloured sketches of designs, but also attached to them are the sort of swatches, so it's quite a 3D archive, that one. Well, film is 3D too, of course.
I'm just looking here, like at the top of this shelf, if somebody wanted a print all the way down there, all the way up the top, it's obviously catalogued. I can see numbers on each of them.
Yeah.
Presumably you have a searchable database. But it's a hell of a thing to be able to make sure that all of this stuff is ready to go at a moment's notice.
Yeah, it's a big part of our access is print. I mean, obviously, also now people will access negatives and intermediates for remastering, restoration. You can see here, just to our right, is a cherry picker, which is needed. I no longer have a license to ride them because you have to be trained to abseil down in case it gets stuck 30 feet up. But I used to take one of these and just look at, get material accessioned into the collection. And one of the new prints that we've been able to get made in good time for the festival is Local Hero, which is really exciting because, surprisingly enough, we didn't have good showable prints in the collection of Local Hero. And with the kind help of Warner Brothers in the States, we've had 2 new prints struck. So we'll be showing one of those in the festival, and then one of them will come into this vault.
Right. Join all of these other films on the shelves.
Join the rest, yeah.
Wow.
So that's a sign that we, as well as our lab here that you've visited, that we're working with others where we can to get new prints struck.
It's a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah. Still see that as an important part of what makes our work distinctive, I suppose. Yeah.
Does each of these film cans actually have written on it what it is, or is it just the code numbers?
It's a mix in here. So you what you can see is a lot of handwritten numbers. When the collection began, our forebears, they began with blocks of numbers. So they were meaningful. They assigned... I used to be able to remember when I worked in that
there was second
film
nature
inspection.
one time.
In fact, I always look out for my handwriting. As we... and they're great because they're kind of mysterious that you just see this number, 600,458 AC, and that means the first reel of 3. But what is it? You have to look on top and so on. Then you can see we moved to barcoding, as you'd expect.
Amadeus here. Yeah.
Right, here's a 35mm print of Amadeus, but our 70mm print is playing in the, in the festival. Behind us here is Watership Down, print of Watership Down. So some are written, and then others retain their mystery. And it's I always feel it's a bit of a rule of thumb as an archivist that, as I say, when I started in accessioning, you come down and the juicier the title, the more boring the film turned out to be. That was seemed to hold fairly true.
You were talking earlier about the about the prints going out to other festivals and stuff, and you've just come back from the TCM festival with that Jaws print, that 35mm Jaws print. How did it go down in LA?
Really, I mean, the whole festival, that was my first time there, and they gave a salute to the BFI with 6 screenings of prints from our collections, and that dye transfer print of Jaws from 75, 76 on the huge screen at the Egyptian Theatre, which has been beautifully renovated, just went down a storm. But also a nitrate print of Mildred Pierce from our collection played there. And I introduced a new print that was made in our lab of Private Life of Henry VIII to really enthusiastic audiences. So it was great to show some of that range, and actually all our screenings, as it turned out, were from print. I mean, we'd looked at various titles with the festival, but it kind of worked in a nice way to choose a variety of features, but all of them from print. Some archival, like the Sidney Poitier thriller, Edge of the City, and some newer. So that was a brilliant event, a series of events, really.
Yeah, it's great to have those relationships with other festivals, isn't it? Because, you never know what might come your way for a future festival. So, that's great.
It's very true. And actually, when we were working with the programmers there on the final piece of the puzzle, they did say, actually, the slot that we're looking to program is in a theatre that can only run film, and I hadn't heard that in such a long time. That was really quite a novelty. That tickled us, and it was a nice challenge to think, okay, what would we want to play there that has to be a print as well. That was quite, yeah.
One of the things I've noticed coming around here today is the pride that everyone has in working here, and it's something I can hear in your voice and see when you're looking around this room. You know, there's something to be really proud of with the BFI's archive here, isn't there?
Yeah, I think the other thing that one of the reasons for TCM inviting us to the Classic Film Festival was this year is the 90th anniversary of the BFI archive, and that makes it one of the eldest. I think there is a pride in that. It's everyone here's really keen to share what they know about film and pass it on. And I'm personally thrilled, as leading conservation department, that we've had, Chris was saying about the traineeships that we've been able to advertise recently, funded by National Lottery Heritage Fund. But that's really exciting that we're be able to bring through new film conservators, not necessarily for BFI. They
who knows where they might
go.
They
may find work anywhere, but that's that would be the danger. But because unfortunately it's so engrossing, this work, and you need that bit of experience too, of course, that people want to stay and look after great collections like these. And there's something you see around the world, actually.
Okay, my name's Sonia Genete. I'm a curatorial archivist, and this is the room where a lot of inspection happens, and more specifically nitrate inspection. It's equipped with a lot of extraction equipment, so nitrate that may be decomposing or safety material that has vinegar syndrome is basically the room where it's looked at on a bench safely with all the extraction.
And vinegar syndrome being the smell that the print gives off because it's degrading. Exactly.
That's when acetate stock degrades, it creates these gases, these acetic off gases, and you don't want to be breathing it. You want to be having something that sucks the air away from it.
So talk me through some of the equipment that you have in this room then.
All right, so this is a winding bench, and I have got on this bench a print of Partie Campagne, Jean Renoir, 1936 film released in 1946. And this is one of the prints that we will be showing at the Film on Film Festival in June.
And so you're going through inspecting it to make sure
I'm giving it a last inspection. It's already been inspected. We've had a rehearsal at South Bank, so we know it can go through a projector. But I'm giving it a last check before it goes there, before the festival.
Okay. And does that include looking for shrinkage of the print, or is it for scratches and tears and dirt? Is it all of those?
Yes, so all that we have done that a few weeks back when we first inspected it. So yes, scratches, shrinkage, number of splices, just general condition, and if there's mold and if there's decomposition on it. So we would do that for every print that we're checking for the festival. But this one is in very good condition. So it has few scratches. It has some scratches, but it's in reasonable condition for its age. Yeah. But it's also it hasn't shrunk too much, so we know it can go through a projector, and it hasn't got too many splices either. So yes, it's one of the ones we feel confident it's going to go through.
Yeah, because I guess some of those splices could be very old, and the glue, the cement, kind of can degrade as well.
Yes, so if that happens, we would redo them. We'd put some tape on both sides as well. I could wind through one to do that. I was trying to look for the scene where Renoir has a short cameo appearance in it, and I was trying to find that scene just when you arrived. So I'll try and see if I can find it. And we might see some splices along.
And so you've got a little monocular here as well, should you need to, or a lens to look up close.
Yes, a magnifying glass. Actually, is it? That's actually him here, I believe. Hang on. Yes, that's Jean Noir.
So I'm looking right through this lens with the bench lit up beneath, looking through the film front. I can see the optical track there as well.
Mm-hmm. So he's the owner of the restaurant where the family will stay for their picnic. He's there very, very, very briefly in the film. It's quite nice. I haven't seen any splices so far. Obviously, we don't want too many splices in the film, so it's a good sign when, you know. But let's see if I can get to one.
You're looking, I'm keeling for a splice for doing it.
I am. There we go. There we are.
That was the bump. Yeah.
There's a little. So this one's nice because it has. You see that little
dark patch
blob
there. Yeah.
of ink. It's called a bloop mark. So that's what people who inspected and repaired the film would put on top of where the joint is to avoid the big clunk sound when the splice goes through. So you could sort of yeah. Do you want to fill that? It's fairly flat.
Yeah. You can certainly feel there's a little bump there,
but this is where we're looking. This is what we're after. We don't want something that is too thick.
Yeah,
that might risk jumping in the gate.
Yeah,
and definitely not brittle. Brittle is not a good thing for a nitrate print, and it's certainly not something we would project if it was the case, because it's that is too risky for the film and for the projector.
How important is it for you to know the film, to be familiar with the film when you're inspecting it like this, in terms of the actual film itself? It's something to look at an original print of a film made by Jean Noir. I think there's definitely you can't be completely indifferent to that. I don't know everything about a print when I first put it on the bench, but I get to know a little bit about its history and past and how it's been handled before it came to us. And then you become part of that history yourself as well.
Oh, well, maybe it's nice nice to think of it that way. Yes.
Leave your mark on it, or hopefully not.
No, I don't want to leave the mark. This is what this is for.
Could I hear the machine start up there? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's the sound of the extraction system.
Extraction.
So there's a tube.
A complex network of extraction pipes all around. So every bench has a pipe.
Yeah, like a tube coming down to make sure that it's vacuuming away the smells. And presumably dust as well.
Dust and mold scores. I mean, I know this print is clean and hasn't got any mold or anything on it. But if I were to put something out of the vault I hadn't looked at before, I would obviously put this on while I wind through it. Yes, and it just sucks all the dust and anything. Yeah.
So we're going right. We're going to turn the extractor off now. What's the print here on this desk?
So on this desk is the end of reel 2, I think, for Local Hero. So I was mentioning to you that the new print's been made for the.
Yeah, you can certainly see it looks pristine.
Yes, this exactly. Even at this kind of slight distance, it's looking good, and just being prepared for the projection for the theatre itself. So the only time, so it's only been run twice really. Once at the lab, that produced it, Photochem, and then once for us to view it here.
Cool.
Make sure it's okay. I know you don't mind going a bit into detail, nerdy detail, Jamie. So we'll just note, being a colour print now, it's got a high magenta track on it. So instead of those coloured prints used to have to silver reapplied to the soundtrack area, because the old sound readers on the projectors couldn't, they wouldn't read the track properly if it was just the dyes in the film that make up the picture. Now most projectors have the red LED for a cyan track, which is black to a red reader. But for tracks like these, that could distort them a bit. So this will have been made from a sound neg of the early 80s. Yeah. Mono, nice, good mono, clear, good old mono. I don't know why. Why did we change? This is a good kind of in-between point for getting reproduction, in a nice way of that original mono on a mono projector. So being introduced by our colleague Doug Weir, who's actually a good friend of Bill Forsyth, and has worked on, as you know, remastering several of his films.
Yeah, I hope to see it.
So that's this is the print that will go to the screening. Yeah.
Yeah, being here on the day where the tickets have become available is the worst timing I've ever managed.
Yeah, it was like a trap we set for you now. Yeah.
I see some stickers next to the bench here. Nitrate in big red letters.
Yeah, that nitrate label is quite highly prized. Maybe we'll let you take one of those away in lieu of a ticket. So you can see we have the nitrate in red letters on bold red letters on a white background. That's sort of for the top of the can. That thinner tape, orange, highly flammable, that goes around the edge of the can. And just in case you were confused, there's another one that says this is nitrate with a cellulose nitrate with an orange kind of flammable solid symbol on it. So it's when a can of nitrate comes from the BFI National Archive to a responsible recipient, they can't be left in any doubt that there could well be nitrate inside the can. Yeah.
My name is Martin Coffin at the BFI Archives. Not totally sure what my job is. It's projectionist, QC, print inspection, everything. It's a big picture.
Yeah. And what's your role specifically with the Film on Film Festival? Where do we start and where does it end?
We got projection and QCing of prints, and then preparing the prints to go out for screenings.
So if for instance, if it's programmed to have a certain print, like let's pick Star Wars, for instance.
Yep, no, well.
That came through your hands here?
Some of it. Sometimes it comes here, sometimes it's checked at the South Bank.
Yeah.
So I don't see absolutely everything, or I'll still be doing this in 5 years' time. We'll never get there. So a few people, all muck in and, we'll do this one here, we'll do that one there.
Yeah. I can see, you've got a film reel in your hand at the moment, just surrounded by movie memorabilia. Yeah. This has been in your life in film.
Yeah, so I've been here almost 40 years now. So it's 38, 39, 40 since 1988 when the place first opened.
Yeah. Yeah. And before you came here, did you work as a projectionist at a cinema, or what was your way into the industry?
I worked in a lab.
Right.
So, printing processing, so I knew the way around, film prints before I came here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then stupidly, I work in a cinema in the evening as well, just to keep it in the family.
Yeah, right. And how do you sort of approach the passing on your knowledge as well? Because you've got all those decades of experience.
Yeah, I've just taken on a trainee. So they're working in the department next door, and they're coming here and learn how to project. Yeah. So in a few years' time, they'll be as good as me, I hope.
Yeah. Can you talk me through some of the kit you have in here? And
so, if we go into this projection box here, we call this the nitrate projection box.
Yeah.
Because we can run nitrate in here.
Yes. The famously dangerous film format.
Yeah, so this projector here is a Gaumont Cayley 18, built in about 1955. It's made of the same stuff they make tanks out of.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like half submarine, yeah.
Oil in there and dust it down and it will run forever.
Yeah.
Newer machines like this one over here, that's pure electronic and they're not too reliable.
Really, yeah.
They're always going wrong. So
this is more of a workhorse.
So this is the workhorse machine. We used to have two of them. It was in reception downstairs, you see the other one.
Yes, yeah.
They actually came here from the NFT. They had these as spare projectors to actually QC the prints there before they showed them. And they were actually called Gert and Daisy. They were named. So this is Gert left here, Daisy's downstairs.
Nice. And so what are some of the risks and aspects involved in putting a nitrate print through this projector?
Nitrate prints, you have to follow a certain criteria. You have to have 3 projectionists in here that know what they're doing. Right. Prints have to be checked by hand, by eye, to make sure the joins are made correctly, it's not shrunken, it's not decayed. And then you do a dry run first to make sure that film will go through the projector before you put the lamp on.
Right.
Because you imagine the lamp is quite dangerous. It's a bit stupid when you think of it. The lamp, the tip of the arc in the lamp is 2 times hotter than the surface of the sun. And you're going to put it, about 5 inches away from nitrate that catches fire at 30 degrees centigrade. It's a little bit silly. Yeah. Don't let health and safety know this one.
But what advantages does a nitrate print give then? I mean, we talked earlier about some of the sort of vivid colour in nitrate prints.
Nitrate prints and silver content. You get a much richer black and white film. Right. And it's nearer to the first generation as well, which gives it the sparkle.
Yeah, really makes it pop.
Yeah, plus there's the romance in your head.
Of course.
The placebo effect. Oh, nitrate, ooh. So we carry on that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just looking around the room here. I can see a bunch of reels sitting here. What's that? Is that
that's from a different projector.
70mm?
That's it's a 6,000 foot spool, so we can put half a feature on there.
Right, yeah.
So these ones are just doing changeovers. So it's 2,000 on here. Runs for 20 minutes. Q dot in the corner, just like Fight Club. Change over and off you go.
20 minutes per reel.
20 minutes per reel.
And that, the job of a projectionist is, as I said, a bit of a dying art. Have you found that it becomes more challenging throughout your career to sort of keep up with the new technologies as well?
As I say, working in a cinema, we switched over from 35mm 2 digits, so I brought that with me here. So they're interchangeable. And there is a certain magic in digits as well.
Yeah, and you've got your feet in both camps then, haven't you? So you're here by day handling film, and then in the cinema you're running DCPs. And this screening room here is used purely for previewing prints that are going to be exhibited, or if for just for notes in storage for the archive as well? Yeah,
so I'm QCing material that will go into the archive, plus what's going out for screenings. Yeah. So we're running about 100 cinemas running 35mm now. Is that right? So the place you come to get film is here now. Yeah. So I'm looking at all the films that are going out to the cinemas, like this one here, Karasara film, which is going to the Prince Charles. So I'm looking at this to make sure it is okay before they get their print. I might say, no, you can't have it. And then, oh, please come in. No.
And what sort of thing would make it not possible to be screened?
If it's shrunken, shrinkage, too much damage. You're allowed a certain amount of damage because, this one here is a 55-year-old print as well. Yeah. So,
there's a certain threshold where you're saying, hang on, actually, you can do a digital screening instead.
Yeah.
Because we need to preserve this in what
they like it on film, Prince Charles.
Yeah. I was down there just the other day watching Straight Story, the David Lynch film.
The lawnmower.
The lawnmower on 35mm. Yeah, that was a treat.
So this is one theatre here. We have a second theatre. Uh-huh. So the day job is just mostly me sitting there drinking tea and watching films.
So we're in this little theatre. There's a desk at the back and a large screen at the front and a couple of comfy chairs.
So I make notes of what I'm watching. It comes as scribble, and then I change it into English and put it on, update the... Plus I'm also keeping an eye on all the cinemas where prints are going. Yeah. So we've got all the cinemas from abroad, which are FIAF, so they've got changeovers, they can do changeovers, so they can borrow master material, and the UK cinemas. So you can see there's not many cinemas left in the land.
Yeah.
Because as a projectionist, we knew that digits was coming. but we thought it will be a slow progression. Oh yeah, it's coming. Yeah, don't worry about it. And then one day, 2012 was that magic number.
Yeah.
Everything changed. Everything changed overnight.
What was it about 2012 in particular?
It was just something that happened. Something happened in 2012 that made all the cinemas change. I think filmmakers were paid money to actually make their films as digits. So we do have a second theatre. So that's just me in there watching the films. But sometimes we want to have a look in a more professional theatre. So we've got this one here, which is full 5.1 Dolby Surround.
Gotcha.
And we can do all the masking, scope, 185, 166.
And do you have a good setup at home as well?
No, my wife won't let me. Many years ago.
That's why you work in the cinema as well.
Yeah, so this one here can run 35mm and it's got a laser projector for digits.
And so this gives you a better impression of what it might be like for the sort of end user. Yeah. Very cool. Do you get to have private screenings in here now and again?
We do staff screenings, and then when we have like visitors come, the celebs come and that, we bring them into this one, make a fuss of them.
Nice.
Would you like to go in the back and have a look?
Yeah, let's have a look in the back.
So this one here is a VIC-5, a Cinema Mechanica. This was the workhorse of the multiplex.
Right.
So when you had like 5 screens, 10 screens, it would be this one running, or 5, 10 of them, on time clocks. All joined up end to end, one big spool.
Yeah, right. And that's when projectionists could go from one screen to another, and you didn't need one per screen.
No, and sometimes you could run the same print on 2 projectors, you just loop it on through the next one.
Oh, really?
So 2 screens, same film.
Just on a slight delay.
Slightly delay. If one breaks, they all break.
Right.
Then a black box with the digits barcode laser projector. This was the first one in the country.
Right. And this, how do you get a DCP delivered then to a modern cinema these days?
Mostly it's DCPs physically delivered, but as time moves on, they just come down the phone line overnight.
Right.
And then you need the KDMs, the encryption, to unlock it to make sure it's showing in the right place at the right time on the right screen.
Mm-hmm. I'm guessing that you prefer a film print?
Yeah, because you can, sticker tape and string. You can fix that. If this stops, turn it off and on again and see if that works.
Yeah. I remember once being in Valencia, and we went to see a concert of some DJ, and his hard disk got corrupted, so the whole thing was cancelled.
That's it. Yeah.
Where's your records, mate?
Yeah. I mean, this one here, if the light's on and the film's moving, you'll have a picture on the screen.
What's that currently threaded up there? Then is that just a test reel or something?
Henry VIII on there. Private Life of Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Would you like us hear it run?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. That's the fan for the lamp. This is the lamp striking. There should be pictures on the screen.
There's something so evocative about that sound, isn't there?
Yeah. But don't put your fingers in there.
Yeah, no. Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm David Jones. I'm the film scanning lead at the BFI National Archive.
And we're in this lab here. I can see a number of computers. I can see some machinery behind some glass over there. Can you just describe what it is you do within these 4 walls?
Well, our role is to create preservation and access copies, high-resolution scans of the material that we hold. Yeah.
So that would be not necessarily things that are for public consumption, but are for posterity and for the archive.
It's both. Often one leads to the other. So you might get an access request, and we will digitally preserve it while we're making it available. So we might make a lower resolution scan for a client, but we'll preserve it at a high resolution, and that will then get preserved.
So can you talk to me about a film that is being screened for film on film that has come through here?
Right, so we have a copy of The Last Summer. It's quite a rare print because there's material in it that's been edited out of later versions. There's quite an upsetting scene in it, and this has scenes, frames in it that don't exist in other prints. It's P1 acetic, which means it's starting to degrade. They are going to project it, but as a safety measure, we're scanning it so that if anything happens to it or it starts to get worse, we have captured it as it is currently. I mean, it's not in the best condition. It's an ex-distribution print, so it's been around the block. It's been through probably hundreds of projectors.
Yeah.
It's showing its age. So it's not going to get any better, it's only going to get worse. So now's the time to capture what we've got. Colour's starting to fade. It's damaged, it's warped. It's not the best print I've ever seen, but it's sort of unique. I think it might be unique. It's very rare anyway. So just to be absolutely safe, I'm sure that we'll get it back. And if we don't get it back in one piece, we have a record of what it was like when it went out the door. We're very conscious that we don't add anything or take anything away from the material.
Yeah.
We're trying to capture as it is. We try not to make any edits. We don't colour correct. We don't put anything back in that we think might belong. We don't take anything out that is there. So if it's out of sync, if it's out of rack, if there's missing material, our job isn't to replace that. Ours is to capture as it is. And then if a restoration happens later on, they'll use our scans to do that work. But we're not deciding now what it's going to look like after it's been restored. That's not really our...
Your preservation rather than restoration.
Preservation, conservation,
yeah,
rather than restoration.
And what's unique about this particular film scanner you have in the corner here?
So this is the latest thing. It's a laser graphics director. It's capable of scanning at 13.5K, which is absolutely enormous.
It's insane.
It is insane. We don't scan at that. We have experimented, but we tend to we overscan at 5K, so we preserve image at 4K. So we scan edge to edge, top to bottom, everything. It can do low resolution reference scans right up to this huge resolution, which we don't use. We just don't have the computer processing to make that viable.
Yeah.
And a lot of material isn't, once you get beyond a certain level, it's diminishing returns.
Yes.
So if it's small gauge or very old, once you get past 2K, it's questionable whether beyond that is worth doing. We do everything at 4K. But you can see the difference in like an 8mm or very, very old print. What you'll get is just bigger pixels. You're not getting more detail. So there is a limit to what is worth doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally understand that. And what formats is this machine capable of using?
8mm, 9.5mm, 16mm, 28mm, 35mm, 65, 70mm. So
28 being a rare one as well.
28 is rare. We've got some 28mm material that we can't really do anything with. Well, we couldn't until now. So I'm anticipating some 28mm workflow coming through that department.
Does that make it particularly difficult to have a 28mm film come through here, given that it's very difficult to project? Like, because we want the end result to be able to see this film in all of its glory.
Sure. I think because we don't get to handle it very often. It's not that much different from 35, but the equipment that we've got is built for 35mm. So just getting it onto a core, making repairs is a different mindset. It's not a regular gauge that we see very often.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure that there's very limited kit available that can deal with it.
We do collect kit from far and wide for just this sort of thing. We've got rooms full of obsolete kit that we reinvent for just this sort of purpose.
Yeah, I noticed, of course, everyone here is a film enthusiast, and I was just talking in the lab about, keeping your eye on auctions and things like that.
Yeah, there's an auction happening at the moment. A big facility has gone bankrupt, and there's a few things in there that we wouldn't mind
Yeah, I have my eye on the Moviola, actually.
Right. There's a Technicolor 3-strip camera going.
Yes.
Which is not for us, but there's things like 4K monitors, things that are prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
That we might be able to use.
Yeah, because we have to remember here that the BFI is not an organisation with a bottomless purse.
No, with us it's money and space. They're the two things that restrict what we do and always have.
Yeah. Are you somebody that can still watch a film and enjoy it, or are you always looking out for those little imperfections?
I think the longer I've been here, the less enjoyment I get as a movie goer. I tend to view rather than watch.
Yeah.
Which, it takes the shine off it a bit.
But we need people like you to be able to do those jobs.
Yeah, if we weren't here, then people wouldn't be watching films. But I don't have the same enjoyment of going to the cinema that I used to. And it's because I'm technically examining the product rather than enjoying the story.
Yeah, I find myself... on first viewing, trying to surrender myself to a film, and then on second viewing, I start to pick holes in it. But I can imagine it gets more and more difficult the more technical your job is.
Yeah, you're looking for the Q dots. You're looking for that's something. There's a sync issue there. Your brain is analysing it rather than saying what a wonderful hour and a half I'm having in a dark room watching the film.
I'm specifically talking to people today about film on film, and how important do you think it is for us to have those festivals?
I think it's vital. I think certainly for people who are younger than us, we get visitors and you show them the material and they're astounded that it's images on plastic. They've never seen or understood that that's how film is. It's if they're born digital, you can see their eyes light up when you're showing them the stuff. And I think that's why I enjoy working here, is because of you get to feel the stuff. It's a real thing. It's not just a flickering image. It's a mechanical process that's 100 and whatever years old. So I think you need to maintain those skills and the material, because we are where we are today because of all the stuff that's gone before. And you have to acknowledge that and celebrate that this stuff still exists. A tiny proportion of what is made still exists. But every day we see something that we haven't seen before. There's always something new. Every time you open a can, you find something new and exciting to...
Yeah, and as I was saying to some of your colleagues as well, it's great that you then become part of the history of that film with your work.
That's it. But again, we try and be as minimal interaction as possible. We don't try to over repair anything. Again, we're not cutting anything out or putting anything in. We're doing enough to get a scan or a projection out of it. We're not throwing lots of tape at it or chopping things around to make it look better. We're doing just enough so that it can do what it was designed to do.
Yeah, and to be preserved for future generations as well.
Yeah, we've been known to undo repairs, because if you're using tape, sticky tape, you don't know what effect that's going to have in 50 years. So you don't want to do anything that's going to have a long-term negative effect on it. So you'll do what you need to do, and then you might undo that so that it can go into storage and not interact with the material.
So you're part of the film's history, but you're very light hands on it.
Yes, I think, there's names on the credits. I don't think we want our names on the credits particularly. I have been credited for one thing, and it was, it was quite a...
What was that?
It was our restoration of Epic of Everest. I was involved in that. And my name came... I didn't know this, but my name came up again. I did that. Well, part of that.
Yeah. So once the film is scanned, what is its life after that?
It sits here in our digital preservation infrastructure. So it's stored safely in 2 separate sites in case disaster planning. For this particular film, we created a low resolution screener as part of the introduction of film on film. They'll use clips from that. So again, while we were doing the preservation work, we made an access copy available for other uses, so we only have to do the thing once. That's going to minimise the handling for this now. We've done our work, which hopefully means we won't have to do it again. So that's one more journey it's made, and that it can go and rest in peace. But the scan is stored safely, and it can be retrieved later. So if there's a restoration or another action required, we can download it from our servers and do the work. So usually this one's right to left. Most film stuff runs left to right, but this runs the opposite way, so it takes a bit of you look at it thinking, does it go backwards? No, it's
adjust your muscle memory.
Yes.
Yeah. So Dan is just threading up the laser graphic scanner with a reel at the moment. What sort of speed is it doing that at then? It's looking at every frame, obviously.
Yeah, just over 6 frames a second. Right. Normally with colour, you can get up to about 7 frames a second. Black and white up to about 10 frames. But then if you start adding infrared or HDR, it does slow it up.
What is this print that's running through at the moment?
This is last summer, which is going to be at the film festival.
I should have brought my granddad's 8mm with me, shouldn't I? So there you have it, a glimpse into the passionate, intricate work going on at the BFI National Archive in support of this year's Film on Film Festival. So whether it's the original 1977 Technicolor print of Star Wars, or a rare nitrate reel from, was it 1929, or the UK's only surviving 35mm pilot of Twin Peaks, these are films with life, texture, and stories written into every scratch and every splice. The full programme can be found on the BFI website, or if you're at the BFI at the South Bank, they always have those nice little booklets there that you can pick up and take with you. And as you will have heard in my conversation with James at the start, there's also these workshops and lectures, and I'm going to be involved in one of those. It's titled The Star Wars Influence, of course it is, and I'm part of an expert panel looking at the ripples caused throughout the worlds of filmmaking and technology following the release of George Lucas's little movie. It's going to be hosted by my friend and friend of the podcast, Doug Weir. It's at 12 p.m. on the 12th of June. That's the day before my birthday, so please bring gifts. And talking of gifts, I'll have some Filmumentaries podcast stickers to give out, and one lucky recipient will get a signed copy of my Jedi Timeline book. Not sure how I'm going to decide that yet, but maybe if there's an opportunity for people to ask questions, maybe it'll be for the best question. We'll see. My thanks again to James, Chris, Kieran, Sarah, Sonia, Martin and David for making it all happen yesterday. Yeah, it was just yesterday. So I was up very late editing this last night, and I was up very early, thanks to a bit of jet lag, editing it this morning. Probably the biggest episode I've done in terms of, the content and the editing, but I'm glad to have turned it around in time. And remember, if you're listening in time, don't forget that the Film on Film Festival runs from the 12th to the 15th of June at the BFI South Bank. I highly recommend you checking it out if you want to see cinema at its most tactile and alive. When I saw Jaws at the 2023 festival, it was a transformative experience. I banged on enough about that when I interviewed Doug Weir the first time in the previous episode. And that was the start of my relationship with the good folks at the BFI, something I'm really grateful for. I made some friends, and I've made some great contacts there as well. Look out for the second episode on the 4th Tuesday of this month. That will be May 27th of May, as we say here. So thanks for joining me, and I hope you can do so for the next episode of the Filmumentaries podcast.